They call me Kaelith Shadowmere now. But that wasn't always my name. I sit here in my tower, maps spread before me like the world itself waiting to be claimed. The candlelight flickers across territories I've already marked. Cities that will bend, kingdoms that will fall. It's not a matter of if, only when. But I wasn't always this. This power, this certainty, they were earned in blood and fire, through betrayal and survival. Let me tell you how a simple village girl named Mara became the woman the world now fears.
I was 13 when I decided to learn magic, not because of some grand calling or mystical dream. I simply wanted to. My village was small, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your business. There was only one person who claimed to know magic, Aldrich the Wise, they called him. Though looking back, Aldrich the Fraud would have been more accurate. He was a portly man with a beard he clearly thought made him look distinguished. He wore robes covered in symbols that meant nothing, and he spoke in that pompous way people do when they're trying to sound more important than they are. The village believed in him completely. He'd wave his hands and produce a few sparks, heal a minor wound, make a light glow in his palm. Simple cantrips, though I didn't know that then. When I approached him about becoming his apprentice, he laughed. Actually laughed in my face. "A girl?" he scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension. "Magic is not for women, child. Women are healers at best, tending to homes and husbands, bearing children. The arcane arts require a strength of mind and will that the fairer sex simply doesn't possess." I kept my voice steady. I had confidence in myself, even then, not the cocky arrogance of youth, but a quiet certainty. "Then test me." He smiled, that oily smile of a man who thinks he's already won. "Very well. If you can block a simple spell from me, I'll consider taking you on. But when you fail, and you will, you'll go home and forget this foolishness." A crowd had gathered by then. My parents stood at the edge, my mother's face tight with worry. Aldrich made a show of it, rolling up his sleeves, muttering impressive-sounding words. He raised his hand, and I felt it building, a bolt of force magic, crackling with energy. It was meant to look devastating, and to the villagers I'm sure it did. But to me I could see the structure of it, the way the energy flowed, and I could see how basic it was. Instinct took over. I raised my own hand, felt the magic respond to my will, and a shimmering barrier materialized in the air. His spell hit my shield and dissipated like mist in sunlight. The silence was deafening. Then the murmurs started. I watched Aldrich's face cycle through shock, anger, and finally, a forced smile. "Well," he said, his voice tight, "it seems I may have been too hasty. You clearly have some natural aptitude. I was merely testing your resolve, of course." "You agreed to train me if I blocked your spell," I said calmly. "Everyone here heard you." He looked around at the watching faces. Some were nodding. Old Brennan, the blacksmith who'd never liked Aldrich's pretensions, was smirking openly. Aldrich had no choice. "Of course," he said through clenched teeth. "I always intended to train you. That was merely a minor demonstration of my power. I held back considerably naturally." Some believed him, many didn't, and so my training began. Aldrich was a terrible teacher, but not because he was unwilling, because he barely knew anything himself. He taught me the basics, how to sense magical energy, how to shape it with will and word. But I absorbed everything like parched earth drinks rain. Every lesson I wanted more. That's when I noticed his books. He kept them in a locked cabinet in his study, ancient tomes with cracked leather bindings, grimoires filled with spells far beyond what he was teaching me. At night, when he thought I'd gone home, I picked the lock. It wasn't even a good lock. The spells inside were revelation. Fire conjured from nothing, illusions that could fool, wards that could deflect crossbow bolts. And I could tell, even as a novice, that these were just the beginning. These were journeyman spells, not the master-level magic they must have seemed to Aldrich. I studied them in secret for months, practicing in the woods beyond the village. The spells came to me naturally, but more than that, I could see their flaws. The inefficiencies in the patterns, the wasted energy. I began making small adjustments, improvements. Aldrich caught me eventually. I'd gotten careless, left a book out of place. The rage in his face when he stormed into our lesson, the next day was almost comical. "You dare!" he bellowed. "Those books are far too advanced for a mere apprentice. You could hurt yourself or worse. I forbid you from touching them again." But I'd seen the fear beneath his anger. He couldn't do these spells, any of them, and if I could, it would shatter the illusion of Aldrich the Wise forever. So I became more careful. I continued my secret studies, more cautious now, and I continued to grow stronger. 3 months later, Aldrich made his move. He announced it in the village square with great fanfare. He would take me as his wife, he declared. The crowd cheered. My parents beamed with pride, their daughter marrying the powerful wizard. Several girls my age looked at me with undisguised envy. I saw right through it. This was his solution. Bind me to him in marriage, control me, keep me from ever surpassing him. Maybe even steal credit for my growing abilities. No, I said simply. The square went silent. Aldrich's smile froze on his face. What did you say? He asked, his voice dangerous. I said no. I won't marry you, Aldrich. Now if we're done with this farce, I have studying to do. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, humiliated before the entire village. I should have known he wouldn't let it go. The next day he called me to his home for a private lesson. I went, thinking perhaps we could move past the awkwardness. I was naive. The moment I entered, he locked the door behind me. The smile on his face made my skin crawl. You think you can refuse me? He hissed. You think you're better than me? I'll show you your place, girl. He lunged at me. He was stronger, heavier. We struggled, and he forced me to the ground, his weight pinning me. His hands grabbed at my clothes. Terror and rage warred in my chest. Then training took over. My fingers found his eyes. He screamed, rearing back, and I brought my knee up hard between his legs. He crumpled and I rolled free, scrambling to my feet, putting distance between us. He was clutching himself, trying to rise, one hand over his ruined eye. I could see murder in his expression. He was reaching for his magic. I reached mine first. Fire had always come easiest to me. The spell I'd been practicing, one of his forbidden books, roared to life in my hands. Flames erupted across his body. His screams were inhuman, horrible. The smell of burning flesh and hair filled the room. I watched him writhe, watched him burn, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. When his screams had reduced to whimpers, I walked closer. He looked up at me, his face a ruin of charred flesh. You thought so little of women, I said softly. And a 13-year-old girl just defeated you. How does that feel, Aldrich the Wise? He tried to speak, but I wasn't interested in his words anymore. I'd been practicing another spell from his books, a life-draining magic, dark and terrible. I'd even improved it, made it more efficient. I placed my hand on his forehead and spoke the words. The spell pulled his life force out of him like water from a well. His body shriveled, the burns seeming to worsen as the flesh dried and cracked. When I lifted my hand, there was nothing left but a blackened husk. I gathered his useful spellbooks, all of them this time, and put them in my satchel. There were only a few I hadn't read yet, and a couple with more advanced magic. Everything else I'd already mastered. When I walked out of Aldrich's home, setting it ablaze as I left, people were gathering for the evening meal. They saw me emerge, books weighing down my satchel, bruises darkening on my face and arms where he'd struck me. They looked at me with fear, some with disgust. No one asked what happened. No one needed to. The smell of burning meat drifted from the open door behind me. My parents' faces were pale when I arrived home. My father demanded to know what I'd done. When I tried to explain, the attack, the defense, my mother cut me off. You've ruined everything, she said, her voice cold. I lasted 4 days before I packed my things and left. The town was 2 days' travel south. I'd find another teacher there. I never looked back. The road was quiet for the first day. I kept a steady pace, my satchel of books heavy on my shoulder, my mind already planning what I'd do when I reached the town. Find a teacher. A real one this time. On the second day, 3 men stepped out from the trees. Brigands. I knew it the moment I saw them, the way they moved, the weapons at their belts, the hungry look in their eyes. They fanned out, cutting off any escape route. Well, well, the largest one said, grinning to show missing teeth. What do we have here? A little girl all alone on the road. Please, I said, backing away slowly. I don't have much. Just let me pass. They laughed. The second one, lean and scarred, licked his lips. Oh, we'll take what little coin you have. But you're worth more than that, pretty thing. The brothels in the capital pay good money for fresh meat. I say we have some fun with her first, the third one added. No one's around to hear. No one's coming to save you, girl. They advanced. I continued backing away, my heart pounding, but not with fear. With rage. With cold, crystalline focus. You had your chance, I said, and I stopped backing away. The first spell took the scarred one in the chest. Lightning, raw elemental fury channeled through my will. He was dead before he hit the ground, his heart stopped. The large one barely had time to reach for his sword before fire consumed him. His screams were brief. The third one turned to run. A focused burst of force magic snapped both his legs. He fell hard, shrieking. I walked over to him slowly, deliberately. He was crying, begging. The words washed over me like meaningless noise. No one's around to hear your screams, I told him, echoing his earlier words. And no one's coming to save you. I placed my hand on his forehead and spoke the words of the life-draining spell. This time, I watched more carefully, analyzing how the magic flowed, how the life force transferred. The spell was elegant, efficient. Aldrich's books had called it forbidden magic, dark arts. To me it was simply a tool. When it was done I searched their bodies. A few silver pieces, mostly copper. Enough for a few nights at an inn, but not much more. They had 3 horses tethered nearby, probably stolen, but I didn't care. I'd never learned to ride properly. I made a mental note to fix that. For now, I managed to mount the best of the 3 horses and tied the others to lead behind me. The horse sensed my inexperience and tested me, but I held firm. The town was larger than my village, but still small enough that finding the stables was easy. The stableman looked skeptical when a 13-year-old girl rode up with 3 horses, but coin silences questions. I sold 2 of the horses and kept the finest, though even that one was no prize. The inn was called the Copper Bell. The innkeeper, a rotund man with suspicious eyes, looked me up and down. "We don't rent to children," he said flatly. I laid silver on the counter. His eyes widened slightly. 3 nights, I said, "and I'll need help bringing my things in from the stable." Money has a wonderful way of changing people's policies. The next morning I began my search for a new teacher. The town had a few people who claimed magical ability, a hedge witch who sold charms, a traveling illusionist who did tricks in the square, a scholar who studied ancient texts but admitted he couldn't actually cast spells. None of them were what I needed. Most of the adventuring mages who passed through were on missions and had no interest in training a child. By the 3rd day I was growing frustrated. "There is one wizard in town," the scholar told me reluctantly when I pressed. "But he's not what you're looking for." "Who is he?" "Name's Torvin. Lost his arm in some battle years ago. Lives in that old house on the east side. Does repair work on magical items when he feels like it. Drinks too much. Not a pleasant man." He paused. "But he was a real wizard once. Before. I found the house easily enough. It was run down, the garden overgrown with weeds. I knocked on the door. 'Go away,' a voice shouted from inside. I knocked again. The door flew open. The man who stood there was in his 60s, gray-haired and weathered. His right arm ended just below the elbow. His eyes were sharp despite the smell of alcohol that wafted from inside. What part of 'go away' was unclear, he growled. "I need a teacher," I said simply. "I'll work. I'll pay. Whatever you want." He looked me up and down, then snorted. "A child. Perfect. Run along, girl. Magic isn't a game." I raised my hand and conjured fire, not a spark or a flicker, but a sphere of flame that danced in my palm, bright and controlled. Torvin's expression changed. He stared at the fire, then at me. "Where did you learn that?" "Books," I said. "But I need a real teacher. Someone who actually knows what they're doing." He was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. "Get in here before the neighbors see, and put that damn fire out." Torvin was everything the scholar had warned me about. He was gruff, often cruel with his words. He called me stupid, clumsy, short, scrawny, every insult he could think of. But I noticed something. He never insulted my magic, never questioned my ability, only my inexperience. He taught me properly, how to refine my control, how to layer spells, how to sense the different types of magic. He showed me how to identify magical items, a skill I struggled with more than I'd like to admit. I was only moderately talented at it, and it frustrated me. But when it came to imbuing magic into objects, creating enchanted items, I excelled. The flow of magic into physical form came naturally to me, like fire itself. We took jobs repairing and enchanting items for townspeople. A merchant's lock that needed a better ward, a hunter's bow that needed durability, a lantern that needed to burn brighter. The work paid for my room and board, and I learned with every piece. Over the months, Torvin began to open up. Small things at first, a comment about a battle he'd fought, a mention of places he'd seen. Eventually he told me about the war, about the lich he'd faced with his company of adventurers, about the spell that had taken his arm, and the friends who'd died protecting him while he escaped. "I was Torvin Ironbrand," he said one evening, staring into his cup. "Battle mage of the king's 3rd army. Now I'm just a one-armed drunk in a backwater town." "You're my teacher," I said, "and you're a good one." He looked at me surprised, then looked away quickly, but I saw something in his eyes soften.
Over the next 2 years, Torvin taught me not just magic but purpose. He showed me how magic could help people, protect them. He never asked about my past, never pried into why a 13-year-old girl had arrived alone with a satchel full of spellbooks. But he made sure I understood that power without principle was just destruction. "Magic is a tool," he'd say, "like a sword. It cuts what you point it at. Make sure you're pointing it at the right things." I was 15 when he called me into his study one morning. He looked tired, more than usual. "There's a man in the capital," he said, "sorcerer named Voldris. We adventured together years ago. He's got connections, resources. He can teach you things I can't, not with one arm and half my power gone." He pushed a sealed letter across the table. Go to him. Tell him I sent you. You could come with me, I said. He shook his head. I'm done traveling, girl. My time is well. It's almost up. I can feel it. But you're just getting started. Don't waste what you've learned. 3 days later I left for the capital. 2 days after that, I received word that Torvin had passed in his sleep. I didn't cry. I don't know if I couldn't or wouldn't. But I made sure his gravestone was properly carved, paid for it with money I'd earned from our enchanting work, and I carried his lessons with me. Despite his outward gruff appearance and attitude, he actually cared about me. He was more than a mentor, he was a father I never truly had. The capital was overwhelming. I'd never seen so many people, so many buildings reaching toward the sky. The noise, the smells, the sheer press of humanity, it took days to adjust. Finding Voldris took longer. He was advisor to the governor, housed in the administrative quarter behind guarded gates. It took 3 attempts and Torvin's sealed letter before I was finally granted an audience. Voldris was everything Torvin wasn't. Polished, elegant, his robes were finest silk. His study was filled with artifacts, his shelves lined with books that made my collection look like a child's primers. He looked at me with barely concealed disdain. So, he said, not bothering to stand, Torvin sends me a girl. How typical of him. I handed him the letter. He broke the seal, read it, and something flickered across his face. Anger? No, old resentment, resurfacing like a scar being touched. Torvin always did think highly of himself, Voldris muttered. Then louder, very well. If the old fool recommends you, perhaps you have some talent. Show me what you can do. I demonstrated what I'd learned. Fire, lightning, barriers, a levitation spell. He watched with increasing interest. Adequate, he said, though his eyes said more. I suppose I can find time to refine your rough skills. But you'll earn your keep. I have work that needs doing, and an apprentice should be useful. And so at 15, I became Voldris's apprentice. I took a new name too, Kaelith Shadowmere, partly to mark my adulthood, partly to make it harder for anyone from my past to find me. The capital was a place of reinvention after all. The first year, Voldris was an exceptional teacher. He taught me advanced elemental magic, how to manipulate all 4 elements with equal skill. Fire had been my strength, but under him, I learned to call storms, reshape earth, freeze water in an instant, and ride the wind itself. He showed me how to layer defensive spells, how to create illusions so real they could fool even trained mages. He taught me enchanting at a level Torvin never could have, and I drank it all in. But he also gave me tasks. Practice exercises, he called them. There's a merchant, he'd say. I need him to agree to certain trade terms. Use your mind magic to make him more amenable. Mind magic came naturally to me, almost frighteningly so. I could slip into thoughts, plant suggestions, even read surface memories. It was intoxicating and it was practice. Just practice. Or so I told myself. Over the next 2 years, the tasks became more frequent and more complex. A dignitary who needed to be convinced to vote a certain way. A rival merchant whose confidence needed adjustment. Each time, Voldris would frame it as necessary, as practice for becoming a great sorceress. And then there were the assassinations. There's a threat to the governor, Voldris told me one night. A man who plans to kill him. I've warned the target, but he's paranoid, armed. He'll attack anyone who approaches. You need to stop him before he can act. The man did attack when I approached. I defended myself. Fire, quick and final. Voldris congratulated me on saving the governor's life. It happened 3 more times over the following year. Each time, a threat that attacked first. Each time I defended myself. Each time, Voldris praised my quick thinking. I was 18 when I discovered I could read minds completely, not just surface thoughts, but deep memories, hidden secrets. Voldris was fascinated. He had me practice on dignitaries attending the governor's functions. Learn what you can, he'd say. Information is power. The secrets I uncovered were enlightening. Affairs, embezzlement, hidden alliances. Voldris would smile and thank me. Then those people would suddenly find themselves in compromising positions, doing exactly what he wanted. I was too focused on learning to question it. Every day brought new spells, new techniques. I was becoming powerful, more than I'd ever imagined. That's all that mattered. Until the night the governor died. It was sudden. A heart attack, they said. Voldris was devastated, performed the eulogy himself. The council appointed him interim governor within 3 days. And within a week Voldris turned on me. I arrived for my lesson to find him changed. The mask of mentorship had fallen away, replaced by cold ambition. You've been useful, Kaelith, he said. But you've become problematic. You know too much. And frankly, you've grown too powerful. I can't have you as a rival. The attack came without warning. Battle magic, the kind that levels buildings. I barely got my shields up in time. We fought, and I realized with growing horror that I couldn't win. Not yet. Maybe in a few more years, but not now. I ran. Illusions, misdirection, anything to buy time. His spells chased me through the administrative quarter, destroying walls, shattering windows. I made it to the streets, lost myself in the crowds. But I wasn't safe. The city guard was looking for me. Voldris had branded me as the governor's assassin, as a rogue sorceress. Wanted posters appeared overnight. The first guards who found me I tried to be gentle with. Stunning spells, barriers, just enough to escape. But more kept coming, and they weren't trying to capture me, they had orders to kill. So I stopped being gentle. Fire, lightning, force magic that shattered bones. I left a trail of bodies through the merchant quarter, thinning their numbers until I could finally break free of the city entirely. As I fled into the night, reality crashed down on me. Everything, the mind control, the practice on dignitaries, the threats I'd killed, it had all been manipulation. Voldris had used me to consolidate his power, then tried to dispose of me when I became inconvenient. I'd been such a fool. My desire to learn, to grow stronger, had blinded me completely. I'd become his weapon without even realizing it. I vowed it would never happen again. I found the nomads 3 days later. A caravan of travelers, moving between cities, never settling. They were wary of me at first, a young woman alone on the road, clearly running from something. "We don't take on trouble," their Rani said, an older woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. "I can be useful," I said. "I can read minds, see deceptions, protect you from those who would cheat or harm you." To prove it, I read the mind of the merchant they were about to trade with. He was planning to sell them watered wine and claim 2 of their horses as payment for a fake debt. I told them exactly what he was thinking. The Rani smiled. "You may travel with us." With the nomads, I learned magic I'd never encountered. Divination, the art of seeing possibilities, the threads of potential futures. It was imprecise, frustrating, showing me fragments rather than certainties. But with practice, I began to understand the patterns. The Rani taught me herself. "The future is not a path," she'd say. "It's a forest of paths. What you see depends on where you stand and which way you look." I also learned curse magic. Minor hexes at first, bad luck, clumsiness, minor illness. But the principles were clear, and I expanded on them. Curses that could cripple, that could rot, that could drive someone slowly mad. The nomads never asked about my past. They understood privacy, survival.
We traveled together for 2 years, and I was almost content. Then we encountered the adventurers. They stumbled into our camp looking like they'd been through a meat grinder. A paladin, half-elf, noble bearing despite his wounds. A wizard, human, youngish, clutching his staff like a lifeline. A rogue, halfling woman, quick-eyed and bleeding from a dozen cuts. And a mountain dwarf barbarian who looked like he'd headbutt a boulder and lost. Orcs, they explained. A war band had nearly killed them. They'd escaped barely. After the nomad's healer tended their wounds, the paladin, his name was Keltharis, announced they were going back to finish the orcs. "We could use another mage," the wizard Marcus said, looking at me. "Our magic isn't. Well, I'll just say we can use a bit of help in that department." The Rani nodded at me. It was time to move on. This was my opportunity. I gave my thanks to the nomads, bid my farewell and joined the adventurers. The orc war band was everything they described. Brutal, organized, deadly. And in the first real battle I froze. I'd fought before, killed before, but always alone. Never in a group where my fire might hit an ally. Never where I had to coordinate, to think about others' positions. My spells came late, hesitant, poorly aimed. We won but barely. Kira, the halfling rogue, gave me a look that could cut glass. Thrain, the dwarf barbarian, just grunted his disapproval. Marcus tried to be diplomatic, but even he seemed disappointed. "I've never fought in a group," I admitted. "I'm used to working alone." Keltharis nodded slowly. "Then learn." We all had to once. And I did learn. Over the following months I adjusted. Learned to track my allies' positions, to shape spells for precision rather than raw power, to coordinate with Thrain's charges and Marcus's weaker magic. But I also grew. Every fight was a lesson. Every enemy had some technique, some defense I could study and improve upon. I absorbed combat magic like I'd absorbed everything else, voraciously. I quickly surpassed Marcus. He knew it too, stepped back and let me take the lead in magical combat. The others grew more confident, took on harder contracts. Troll Nest, a vampire coven, a band of rogue mercenaries. I started creating my own spells, improvements on classics. More efficient, more deadly. And I began work on my masterpiece, a staff. I named her Cinder Soul. Blackwood core, inlaid with channels of silver and ruby. Every enchantment I knew went into her. Power amplification, spell storage, elemental channeling. It took me 6 months and nearly all my share of our earnings, but when I was done, Cinder Soul was magnificent. With her, my magic doubled in potency. I was carrying battles almost single-handedly now. The others would engage, distract, and I would unleash devastation. Walls of flame, lightning storms, ice that could freeze a giant solid. I never told them how powerful I'd become. Better, they thought we were all growing stronger together. Their confidence soared, and they pushed for more dangerous contracts. Which is how we ended up facing a lich. The lich was everything the stories promised. Ancient, powerful, surrounded by undead thralls. The tomb itself was a death trap, literal traps and magical wards that nearly killed us before we even reached the burial chamber. The battle was chaos. Marcus fell first, caught by a death spell he couldn't counter. I saw the light leave his eyes. Thrain went berserk, charged the lich directly. The undead horror simply gestured, and Thrain crumbled to dust, his body aging centuries in seconds. Kira was wounded badly but still fighting. Keltharis faced the lich directly. His holy magic the only thing keeping the creature at bay. I threw everything I had at it. Fire, ice, lightning, pure force. Cinder Soul blazed in my hands, channeling power I didn't know I possessed. We won. Barely. The lich's body collapsed. His magic disrupted. But we all knew it wasn't over. The phylactery, Keltharis gasped, bleeding from a dozen wounds. We have to find it. Destroy it. Or he'll just come back. I could sense it. My divination magic, honed over years with the nomads, pointed the way. East through the mountains. Days of travel. We left Marcus and Thrain in the tomb. There was no time for proper burial, not with the lich's resurrection counting down. Kira could barely walk, her leg mangled. Keltharis supported her, and we moved as fast as we could. 3 days. That's how long it took. 3 days of forced marches, Kira's leg getting worse, my magic sustaining her just enough to keep moving. I studied the ritual to destroy a phylactery every night, memorizing every word, every gesture. We reached the hidden shrine just as dawn broke. The phylactery sat on an altar, a golden amulet, pulsing with necromantic energy. I began the incantation immediately. That's when the lich materialized. Too soon. He'd regenerated faster than we'd anticipated. He was weaker, his power diminished, but still deadly. And he was focused on one thing: stopping the ritual. Keltharis moved to intercept. Kira, despite her injuries, drew her daggers. They bought me time. Precious seconds as I chanted, as the phylactery began to crack, golden light bleeding from the fractures. The lich summoned skeletal warriors. They swarmed Kira. I heard her scream, saw her fall. Keltharis was holding his own, his holy magic burning away the lich's defenses, but he couldn't reach Kira. The final words of the ritual left my lips. The phylactery shattered with a sound like breaking stars. The lich howled. His power suddenly cut off. He was mortal now, killable. I turned my full attention to him. Fire and fury, channeled through Cinder Soul. The undead warriors collapsed as I stripped away his control. The lich himself burned, his ancient bones blackening and cracking. Keltharis delivered the final blow to defeat the lich. His sword wreathed in holy light, piercing through the lich's skull. The creature fell, truly dead this time. We found Kira among the bones of the fallen skeletons. She was alive but barely. Her left arm was gone, severed at the shoulder. Her left leg was crushed beyond healing. She'd never adventure again. The lich's body lay before us, still smoking. Keltharis sheathed his sword. I turned on the cultists, huddling in the back. I charged my magic to wipe them out. We need to take them back, he said. Bring them to the capital for proper judgment. Let the courts decide their fates. I stared at him. Judgment. The lich killed Marcus and Thrain. They will resurrect him. He's evil incarnate. We kill them here and now. And then we will be done with it forever. He's already dead, Keltharis said patiently. His phylactery is destroyed. But we can't just execute prisoners. There are laws, processes. Laws. My voice was rising. He has no right to live, and neither do they. Not after what he's done. Not after. That's not our decision to make, Kaelith said, and I heard the steel in his voice now. Justice requires. I didn't let him finish. Fire, precise and controlled, reduced the cultists to ash. Nothing left to resurrect, to judge, to debate. Kaelith's face went white with fury. What have you done? What was necessary? I said coldly. He deserved death. They all did. I gave it to them. You murdered unarmed prisoners. His hand went to his sword. I cannot allow that to stand. My oath. Your oath. I almost laughed. Stop, Kaelith. Don't do this. But he drew his blade. A paladin's oath was absolute. He'd sworn to uphold justice, and in his eyes, I just committed murder. His first strike I deflected easily. Shield spell reflexive. Kaelith, please. I cannot, he said, and attacked again. He was good. Skilled, powerful. His holy magic enhancing every strike. But he was wounded, exhausted from the lich fight. And I was at the height of my power. I could have disabled him. Could have knocked him unconscious, fled. But his words, I cannot, they sealed his fate. He wouldn't stop. Ever. His oath wouldn't let him. So I stopped holding back. The spell I used was clean, but he fought it. He fought it better than most, but in the end it made no difference. His death wasn't quick. Fire and force magic combined, tearing him apart from the inside. His screams were brief but horrible. When it was done, there was barely enough left to identify. I turned to help Kira, to heal what I could. But she was staring at me with pure horror. Stay away from me, she whispered. Monster. You're a monster. I reached for her anyway. She screamed, thrashed, would rather die than let me touch her. So I left. Left her there with Kaelith's remains. Left her to find her own way back to civilization. Left my only friends in ashes. I told myself I'd had no choice. That he'd forced my hand. That his oath had been more important to him than reason. But deep down I knew the truth. I'd enjoyed it. Power. The finality. The absolute control. Something had broken in me. Or perhaps it had been broken for a long time, and I was only now noticing. I adventured alone after that. Took contracts, fought monsters, collected payment. Tried to do good in my own way. Protect villages, clear out threats, help where I could. But Kira talked. She made it back to civilization and told everyone who would listen about the powerful sorceress who'd murdered a paladin in cold blood. Each retelling grew more dramatic, more horrific. She described it in vivid detail. How I'd torn him apart, how I'd smiled while doing it. I hadn't smiled. But it made for a better story. The rumors spread. Enhanced, embellished. Kaelith Shadowmere, the dark sorceress. Kaelith the merciless. Some said I drank blood. Some said I commanded undead armies. Some said I could level cities with a gesture. That last one was almost true by then. Cinder Soul and I had grown fearsome together. Adventuring parties started hunting me. At first, they were low-level young heroes looking to make a name. I didn't want to kill them. I'd incapacitate them, send them running. Surely they'd learn. They didn't. More came. Better equipped, higher level. I continued to show mercy when I could, but they never stopped. They saw me as a monster, and monsters had to be slain. Eventually I killed one. It was an accident, a spell that went wrong, hit too hard. But once I'd crossed that line again, it became easier. The next group I killed 2. Then 3. The attacks escalated. Larger parties. More powerful mages. Coordinated assaults from multiple angles. They never stopped coming. I was forced to kill just to survive. And with each death, I grew colder. These weren't evil people I was fighting. They were heroes in their own minds. Doing what they thought was right. But they wouldn't listen, wouldn't negotiate, wouldn't leave me alone. So I stopped trying to explain. Stopped trying to be better than what they thought I was. If they came for me, they died. Simple as that. The legends grew. Kaelith Shadowmere, the scourge. Entire parties wiped out. Towns evacuated when they heard I was near. Wanted posters in every kingdom. Bounties that could buy a castle. I realized finally that this would never end. Not while I was just one person, hiding, running, fighting. They'd keep coming forever. There was only one solution. I had to take control of everything. And that brings us to now. I look down at the map spread before me. The kingdoms marked, the cities noted, the power structures analyzed. I've spent the last year planning this. Learning the politics, identifying key targets, understanding the flow of power. Cindersoul rests against my chair, thrumming with barely contained energy. My magic has grown beyond anything I imagined in that village so long ago. I command all 4 elements with equal mastery. I can read minds, see the future, craft curses that can topple governments. I can create magical artifacts of devastating power. More importantly, I understand power now. How it flows, how it's maintained, how it can be taken. Valdris taught me that, even if he didn't mean to. The kingdoms are fragmented, squabbling among themselves. Their armies are strong but uncoordinated. Their mages are powerful but scattered. They have no one who can match me, not anymore. Not after everything I've learned, everything I've become. I trace my finger along the map, planning my first moves. The coastal cities first. Control the trade routes, the flow of goods and information. Then the agricultural heartland. Finally the capitals themselves. It will take time. Years probably. But I have time. And I have power. And most importantly, I have certainty. They made me into this. Every betrayal, every attack, every moment I was forced to choose between survival and mercy. They taught me that power is the only thing that matters. That those without it are crushed. And those with it must use it completely or lose it. Torvin would be disappointed. He taught me to use magic to help people, to protect them. But he never understood you can't protect people from a position of weakness. You can't help them when you're being hunted like an animal. The only way to truly help them, to truly protect them, is to control everything. Remove the chaos, the conflict, the petty squabbles between kingdoms. Unite them all under one rule. My rule. I stand, pick up Cindersoul, feel her familiar weight in my hand. The staff pulses, eager. She knows what's coming. Tomorrow I begin. The first kingdom falls within the month. The last will fall within 5 years. This is not ambition. This is certainty. This is the only path forward. They wanted a monster. I'll give them an empress.